All right. Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug.Show. My name's Doug Cunnington, and in this episode, we're going to talk to my friend Jon Santiago. How's it going today?
Hey, man, it's good. Good to be here. Good to meet you in person. You know, we caught up yesterday. You saw me sitting in the hallway here at the hotel. And just nice to actually meet up in person because it's been a while since we did that podcast on my old podcast. That, you were gracious enough to share on your feed. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're at Fincon, and people could probably hear a little bit of the background noise out there. So we're in the, I don't know, do you call it? It's some kind of a meat market situation. They have all the booths over here.
It's like the Expo Center.
Expo, that's what you call it.
Every conference has this, right? Where there's just like all the vendors set up. And here it's like, it's so different compared to other conferences that I've been to.
Yeah.
Where they're explicitly saying, like just go and pitch yourself. Like get these deals, get this business done here. And other conferences, they're a bit more nuanced about it. Just like, go there, check out the vendors, see. But they're here, like I just attended the first time orientation, and that's what they were saying. Like, just, put yourself out there, shoot your shot.
Oh, really? That explains a lot. So we have topics for today. Don't worry. We are recording video too. I'm not sure if people can see my feet, but I did get some YouTube comments where people could see my feet. Some people were very against it, but I know
this is on Mile High Fi or Doug.Show. On
Mile High Fi, okay. Yeah. Sometimes Carl and I show our feet. So even though some people didn't like it, I know some people have a fetish for feet. So can you guys see my feet in the frame here? No. All right. I'll have to check out my OnlyFans. You'll be able to see the feet there. But
hey, can I say something? You should check this out. This is totally random. I don't even know if you want to keep this in the podcast. But there is a content creator who I interviewed on my show, my old show. You could check it out. It's the Video Craft Show. It was presented by Video Husky. The show ended about a month and a half ago. But I interviewed this one creator. She's super big in like the costume niche. Yeah. Her name is Bernadette Banner. Okay. And she started an OnlyFans, but with historical context. And I think she posted, don't quote me on this, just have to look this up for accuracy. But I think she had posted pictures or something of her in Victorian stockings just to see what she could do there. It was not risque whatsoever because that's not the type of content that she does. But I thought it was just interesting that she started an OnlyFans and experimented it away from the typical adult content that most people
Interesting.
Do.
Yeah. I mean, there's something for everyone. So I don't remember what I was talking about before, but that's how this show goes. Maybe I'll remember it later. But Jon, like you said, we saw each other in the hallway and we had not met in person. And I was walking back to my room and I was like, I think I know that dude. So I circled back and then we made the connection and everything. So I had this booth reserved to record, but I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew it was going to work out. But anyway, so thanks for joining me. Who are you? What do you do? Give us a little bit of a background, and then we'll talk a little bit about your old podcast and your work at Video Husky and a couple other things. You do a ton of traveling. You've actually done sort of slow travel / move to other countries. Digital nomad type stuff. You moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's an interesting program. So I want to get into a lot of stuff. But if you got a 90-second intro, how do you describe who you are, what you do, and stuff like that?
Yeah. So basically, I work in content and in marketing. I'm starting this new company, I guess you could say. I'm working with content creators to help them land brand partnerships. It's part of the reason why I'm here, shooting my shot, right? On behalf of other creators that I work with. I'm focusing with people who are in finance, creators in the finance niche, as well as sports. I know a lot of travel creators as well, so that's kind of where my concentration is at this point. But that's basically what I'm doing at this time, is just kind of trying to help bridge that gap between creators and brands who obviously need to pitch their products and creators who have this massive amount of ad inventory on their YouTube channels, their newsletters, their podcasts, to help them find some synergy with each other.
Okay. It's a big need. I know I get a ton of pitches, multiple per day.
I hit you up with the last company I work with too. That's also context. Is like I worked in marketing. And so I was on the marketing brand side, like reaching out to creators, newsletters, YouTubers, podcasters, trying to figure out, hey, could I buy an ad and reach your audience, and how much would that cost? What would that look like? What are the metrics? You know, what's for you? I was curious about like your open rate for your newsletter, click-through rate, and those kinds of things. Like very just like inside baseball on like the marketing side of stuff.
And it's tough because like the pitches come, but they're usually mistargeted really poorly. And you know, some like the thing is, you and I had a relationship before, so like we were able to talk through it and like figure out, and I think I told you, I was like, it's not a good match. Like we could do it, but it's probably not gonna pan out very well. And that sort of scattershot, like it's kind of an old school advertising model where it's just like, get the name out and like we'll figure it out later.
Just like it's not, you know, like partnering with creators. It's not like running a Super Bowl ad where you're getting like the most impressions possible, or your goal is to get the most impressions possible. I think with digital media, and you do this a lot too with the work that you do, teaching people how to, you know, build niche websites and affiliate websites, is the targeting. So like it's much better for me to find a brand if I'm working with like a travel creator who is like, there's say like a mom that travels. You know, you want to find like brands that align with that very specifically, and rather than, you know, trying to reach the widest audience possible. Now there are some creators out there like, you know, Mr. Beast, that dude reaches so many people so he can sell commodities and stuff, but there are many creators out there who specialize in very niche subjects where it might make most sense to partner with companies that sell very niche products.
Got it. And so I'm curious, have you been to Fincon before?
This is my first time. Yeah.
Okay. And then do you know many people here?
There are a few. Well, I knew you were coming here. There's another dude who I know who's going to be here, and he runs actually a pretty big agency representing a lot of financial YouTube creators.
Oh, okay.
And he's doing a talk. So, yeah, I think those are you two are the only people that I've spoken to. There are people who I know your partner Carl, but I've never met him.
Sure.
It's like I have a parasocial relationship with Carl from listening to your podcast. So, I reached out to, then again, other people who I've heard of. Like you had Diane Miriam on your podcast. I actually reached out to her on the app, and because I'd heard her on your show.
Sure.
And then she was in like she was on a webinar with Jess from the Pioneers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Recently,
cool.
Talking about SloFi and all of that.
Got it.
I'm into that stuff as well.
Oh yeah, it's a perfect Venn diagram here. Okay, so my question is, how are you going to, you know, find the creators that could be a good match for you? Do you have any strategy to find those people and talk to them and tell them what you're doing? Or are you more on the brand side? Actually, both. So we'll take them one at a time.
Yeah.
Creators, how are you going to hook up with them?
I think with creators, for me, it's more or less, you know, just kind of having casual conversations. Like I've met a few who say, yeah, I have like a YouTube channel. And then just my curiosity kicks in and I just start asking them like, how long have you been doing it? Do you make content consistent? It's kind of asking these like screening questions to see, because a lot of people will say like, yeah, I do YouTube, but then you post like once every few months and whatnot. And that's no disrespect to them. It's just that, you know, of course, like I'm trying to work with people who are kind of like established in that space, at least in terms of creating content consistently. And so, yeah, with creators too, even with what I'm doing, I'm also not trying to build like this gigantic agency,
right?
Because it's just me right now. And so I'm kind of being a little bit more particular. Like I work with 3 creators right now, one who's in real estate, one who's in travel, and then one who's in professional sports, specifically covering the NBA. But I think at most that I can handle and give like the kind of personal attention that, would be best for them and best for me would not more than like 10 people.
Sure.
Because again, I want to have that like one-to-one type of contact with them, and then also having those conversations with the brands, because there's a lot of back and forth that happens either through email or calls that I have to conduct.
For sure. And I don't know if we don't have headphones here, but don't touch the table just in case the microphone picks up.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sometimes I do interviews and people are like banging on the table and it's like, oh, please. But I
remember hearing an interview that like Tony Robbins did on a podcast, and he kept banging on as just like so energetic about something. It was just like, you gotta
wave your arms around. Yeah, it's too much. So, okay. As far as the creators, so you ask a few screening questions, just conversations, and as you talk to more people, like they might not be a good match, but they remember you and they're like, oh, my friend John may be able to help you out, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So for the brands, do you have a specific approach to tell them about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I have media kits for these creators, and one thing that I did very specifically with that media kit, the last page has pricing.
Okay.
And that either terrifies brands away, or they're like, I'm intrigued, let's talk more.
Sure.
I think with anything, this is just my personal philosophy, like putting the pricing out there and getting a sense of whether or not somebody has the budget to work with you is good from the get-go.
Yeah.
Rather than just like, hey, let's get into those conversations. I know, I get it, like people are very sensitive about money.
Sure.
And it's like a hard conversation to have, but I mean, think about it. Like when you go to Wendy's or something, and that's not a promotion for them, but you have the menu. You know how much like a junior bacon cheeseburger costs. Yeah. You don't go to Wendy's and haggle for like 99 cents or $2, however much it costs now.
I got a great story. So healthcare is just fucked up.
Yes.
So
I had to deal with that recently too.
Really?
Yeah.
So I was trying to get information on vasectomy. So there's a guy behind the camera. So he's getting to know me a lot better now.
I'm getting to know you better too.
Yeah. So I was trying to get a little more info about a vasectomy.
Yeah.
And people look it up, Google image search it if you don't know what it is. And then you can figure out what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was going to go in for a consult, and we have like a high this is deep in the weeds of insurance, but we have a high deductible plan, unsure of like what's exactly covered because it's a high deductible HSA plan. And basically I was going to go in for the consult, but I called the doctor's office to see how much if the consult was going to be covered or not. And they couldn't tell me at all.
Yeah.
And the thing is with that particular doctor, I think they said he's done over 1,000 vasectomies over like many years. Mm-hmm. And surely they have a fucking clue, like ballpark, it could be like $50 to $200 or anything. But they were like, who knows? He could code it, and it depends on the order of the codes and the blah, blah, blah. So anyway, it's like that. And that's one thing on my media kit. We're tying it all together, folks. Don't worry. The media kit that I have, one thing, I don't get asked for it too often, but I don't have pricing. But you're right. It's good just to be transparent. And it's like, this is a fit or it's not a fit at all. Like, right away.
Well,
so
I
like that.
I also was just talking to a woman who represents an agency outside, like literally right before I walked up here to record this podcast with you. And, we were talking about pricing. And I was telling her that part of my strategy with that is to put it out there and also see what the market looks like. Because it's not like we can't adjust our pricing as well.
Right.
Because we know also just the times that we're in, there might be a recession coming. And so budgets are rolling back, and some marketing, in-house marketers or even agencies might not have the same amount of spend that they had the last few years during the pandemic. So, it's just getting that sense of like, what is it? What's the market like right now? Because we might find out like, oh, hey, yeah, this is actually like too cheap. You should be charging more.
Yep.
Or if you find out, hey, this is too expensive, then maybe we'll figure out a way to like roll back prices or figure out other packages. I really think of ad inventory now as just like, it's just similar to creating like any other product, except you're just making it up in your mind. Like rather than like creating a physical product that you give somebody to touch. Like if I was selling somebody this microphone, you have to like think about the design of it and whatnot. I think about the design of ad inventory, but just it's very theoretical in terms of like hey, what are like what rights do you have with this content? Like, can the brand reuse the content for pay-per-click ads, or is it only restricted to the YouTuber's channel or the podcaster's podcast? Things like that. It's fun. It's like there's just like an element of creativity to it that I think, like, if I met myself 15 years ago, he would be confused as to why I'm like working in advertising and marketing. But it's a similar kind of creativity that I was using when I was doing content early on in my career.
Perfect segue. So let's talk about some of the content that you have worked on in the past, and talk about some of your travels and stuff like that. So what kind of work did you do before? We don't know each other super well. We were on the show. So like what kind of content stuff were you doing before, and how's that sort of shifted over the years and matured?
Yeah. Also, too, the last time we did this, like, I was asking you most of the questions.
Right.
So the tables have turned this time around. So I started out my career in journalism. I actually covered the NBA. I worked for the Sacramento Kings, like it was my first professional job, I guess you could say. I started there as an intern in their digital department when like social media was just getting off the ground.
Wow.
I remember being in the office and my boss telling me, hey, like, sign up to this service and then follow our account. It's called Twitter. Like we were just, that's how old I am. Like, don't let like my Asianness fool you. Like, I actually am much older than I appear.
How old are you? Like 47?
I'm actually like 67. No, I'm like 35.
Okay.
But yeah, I was there at the beginning. Like, I started there just getting started with Twitter. Instagram didn't even exist. We were still on MySpace at the time. We were posting stuff on MySpace. YouTube was in existence, but not to like. I think at that time it was still more about like, cats playing pianos and stuff and memes rather than like the amazing content that people are creating these days. So I did that for like the first few years of my career. Was actually like I basically like an early creator myself, because I worked on a blog that covered the Sacramento Kings, and we covered the team. There's not much local media there that covers the team, so we were able to get in there and really like build a name for ourselves doing that. It also helped that we had an affiliation with ESPN at that time, and so that gave us a lot of credibility to go in the locker room, talk to players, talk to coaches, and whatnot. And then from there, like I pivoted in my career, but into something like kind of adjacent. Like, I worked in entertainment marketing. I moved to Las Vegas and worked for this hospitality company that runs like a bunch of nightclubs and restaurants on the Strip and elsewhere worldwide. And so I was able to leverage my experience talking to like high profile basketball players into like talking to musicians and artists. Like, I was lucky enough to interview people like Questlove and DJ Jazzy Jeff in that job. But that was kind of like my first foray into marketing. I did that for a year, and then the traveling thing came into play, and I took like my first long-term trip in 2016, where I just like backpacked around Europe for like 7.5 months, bouncing from country to country. And then from there, like, I kind of wanted to keep that going, so I kind of spent the ensuing years trying to crack the code of becoming like a digital nomad. And so I lived in like a couple different countries while working remotely, temporarily, like places like Colombia for 5 months, and then also I lived in Indonesia. I went to Bali, which is a big like nomad hub, for like 6 months before the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened, and then stayed back here in California. Well, I was in California, where I'm originally from. And then, as you alluded to, I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma this year, and ended up going there and doing this Tulsa Remote program.
So, what's your heritage?
I'm Filipino.
Okay, so, and I'll have to introduce you. I have some friends, JJ and Ray, also fellow Filipino folks. It's funny, mostly Filipino people I talked to today. But so, what did your family think about you, like leaving sort of the corporate career and then traveling Europe? Any friction with that?
No, I had not at all. I feel very lucky. Like, speaking of being of Filipino heritage, Asian American heritage, there is a tendency, I think, for like older generations, and I can understand why they feel this way. But to to be like, no, you have to have this really high paying job, like work as a doctor, or, you know, for most Filipino women, I have many classmates I went to high school with, or their parents told them, you're going to be a nurse and work in the ER. And for me, my parents were never that way. Like, I feel very lucky that they've always encouraged me to go and do whatever I want to do, and makes me happy. And at the same time, I think there's lessons in that too, because it hasn't been like the easiest like road. You know, there have been many times where I've just wanted them to tell me what to do, but they're like, nope, if you're going to go and do your own thing, like, you have to figure it out.
Right.
And so that's kind of been like the blessing from them.
Any siblings?
No, just me. I do have a half sister. My dad was married.
Sure.
He had his first wife he was married to, and she actually lives in the Philippines.
Okay.
So yeah, I when I go to the Philippines and visit, like, I now go and see her, connect with her.
Gotcha.
Her son is actually like closer in age to me.
Oh, really?
Which is
okay.
Interesting. Yeah, he's like in his mid-20s.
Got it. Okay, cool. So not too much friction. And then how was it going? Like you mentioned, there were some struggles. Like, did you save up a bunch of money and you knew you had like a 7-month runway, or like how was it? Were you working part-time when you were in Europe?
I'm a very frugal person. I think that's why Fincon is a good fit for me. I'm looking forward to meeting more like 5 people here. But I've always been like a very frugal person, and I tell people that traveling actually can be cheaper than living stateside here in the US and in Canada. Really, you know, like I mentioned some of those places that I went to. You go to like Colombia, you go to Bali, and the US dollar is worth more there. At the same time, I do want to say as well to have like some awareness about that, the privilege and the advantage that you have. Like, it's honestly caused a lot of tension in me at times where I wonder, like, am I actually contributing to the place, or am I just causing like unnecessary inflation and gentrification here? And you know, you get, depending on who you talk to, like, you get a certain perspective. Yeah,
you mentioned Mexico City when we talked before, and I've heard that too. Like, it's a pretty big hub for digital nomad types, or people escaping from like expensive places like California, and they're like, shoot down to Tijuana or whatever. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because did you spend time in Mexico City?
Yeah, I went there for 10 days actually, and I hung out with a friend. By the way, too, like, another thing that I'm working on is I'm going to start a YouTube channel. It's not launched yet, so unfortunately I can't promote it here when this comes out. Well, maybe it will be launched by the time. I don't know when this podcast comes out.
I don't know either.
If it does come out, if it is, then I'll share the link with you.
Cool.
You could put it in there. But I spent time with, ironically, like another creator like yourself who I had on the podcast. He and I became friends, and then he invited me to just stay with him wherever he was. He's a nomad too. And he's from the States, and he moved to Mexico City. So I got to see what his life was like, just living there as like an American foreigner. He moved into like a very like Mexican, like local neighborhood. He's like the only white guy like in this neighborhood, which is so cool. And he's learning Spanish. He just got engaged to his partner. And so I got to see that side of Mexico City, of what it looks like to live as a local there, as a foreigner who now is becoming integrated as a local there. And it's an amazing place. It's very European, like Mexico City. It feels very much like Barcelona, Madrid, but with like hints of LA, like Northeast LA. You know, like, it's cool. I loved it. I love the fact that you could just walk around everywhere. And of course, if you love Mexican cuisine, there are tacos everywhere. Yeah.
So we have to turn over the booth here in a few minutes. So I want to start wrapping up. So you said, so you did a lot of cool stuff. You traveled around. You were in Colombia for a little while, which that's probably like 4 podcast episodes worth of information. But you're in Tulsa. So why did you move to Tulsa? It doesn't sound like a place where people are like, oh man, we love the hiking and the food. Like, I don't even know no offense to the 4 people in Tulsa that
No, I mean, like, Tulsa. So Tulsa's interesting. There are these programs that have sprouted up around the country during the pandemic that are luring remote workers to move there. And offering them a nice little incentive. It's not really little. It's a pretty good incentive. At least enough to cover a substantial amount of your living expenses while you live there, at least for a year. And so Tulsa actually was one of the first. I had heard about this program in 2018 before the pandemic.
Yeah, I heard of it then too.
Yeah. And since the pandemic, it's really like sprouted and grown. And so it's this program called Tulsa Remote. And the big incentive is like $10,000.
Got it.
So you apply. My process is that I found through a lot of the friends and people that I met there, most people just apply to it on a whim, not expecting anything of it. And then next thing you know, they get accepted into the program and they move there.
Yeah.
And their lives are totally different for it. So
yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I like just different places all over the country, and I've actually been to all 50 states. One of the fun facts about me. But yeah, like even small towns or places you wouldn't expect to enjoy. I'm like, this is great. I could see living here.
Yeah.
I don't know how long, right? But in theory, I'm like, oh, this is not so bad. So I was making fun of Tulsa a little bit, but I'm sure it's great. And the thing is, like, what did the cost of living, what town were you in California? And then what did the cost of living go down to, like, just percentage wise, if you had a ballpark?
I was in like the San Francisco Bay Area. So,
okay.
I don't think I really need to talk much about how much it costs to live out there because everyone knows it. I think you're buying fixer uppers there for like $1 million. I had a friend who bought like a townhouse. Her and her husband bought a townhouse for like $900,000 in the Bay Area. So, obviously, like Tulsa, it's much cheaper, much more affordable.
Yeah. But what's your rent there? Can you share that?
Well, I actually, being the frugal person, I moved in with another Tulsa Remoter. So he reached out to me. There's like a community Slack group for everybody. You could get connected with other members in Tulsa, in the Tulsa Remote program. And he reached out to me and asked me, like, are you looking for a room? I wasn't going to. I was actually going to just get my own apartment. But being the frugal person that I am, and plus I thought about maybe buying a house, I felt like, I think it would just be better to like move into this place. At least I only have to furnish a room. I don't have to furnish an entire apartment. And so I paid like $800 a month for everything.
Yeah.
That's for the room. That's
utilities,
also utilities, internet, and it's a big house. Like we live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a nice neighborhood close to the river.
Okay.
Actually, and it's super close to this amazing park that was also built by the same guy who's funding the Tulsa Remote program. He built this park there. It's a big tourist attraction called the Gathering Place.
Gotcha. And it's so interesting too, because it's cyclical, right? Or I think it's cyclical as far as the popularity of a city. So it's cheap in Tulsa. They're trying to get people there. Cool people are going there. Like it could shift. So I don't know if you're going to stay there, but like in, say, 10 or 20 years, it could be like, oh yeah, there's like this really cool stuff going on in Tulsa because it was way cheaper than all these other expensive cities. Like Colorado's pretty expensive. I used to live in Bozeman, Montana. It's insanely expensive. I had a lot of friends that had to move out because they couldn't afford what the rent was going up to. Yeah. That kind of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. So do you think you'll stick around in Tulsa much, or?
I don't know yet. I'm not fully decided yet at this time. I am coming up on the year. They ask for like, a 1-year commitment for you, and they pay out that disbursement in installments, monthly installments. So I haven't really made a decision quite yet at this time, but I think like Tulsa, what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it like the new Austin.
Okay.
Like it's very, I haven't been to Austin myself, but I think the vibe that they're going for is very similar. I think you would like Tulsa because there's a ton of breweries there.
Yeah.
So they have like a good home, brewery scene, beer scene. There's good arts and culture there. They had just opened up like this Bob Dylan music center out there.
Okay.
And there's also amazing history in Tulsa as well with like the Greenwood District, which was known as like, it was home to like Black Wall Street, which was like a thriving community of African American people who, were building something for themselves until like the Tulsa Massacre about 100 years ago, which is like a whole other, like, I'm not a historian, so I think that, but it's very interesting, like to go there and see the history. There's important American history that happened in Tulsa. And so it's cool that they're drawing in people to kind of revitalize the city. I guess the downside is if you don't want to if you don't like to drive like I do, like you kind of have to have a car to get everywhere.
Sure.
I don't have a car. I just take Uber and bike around from places, from point A to point B. But
that is interesting. Well, and I was going to say so many places, like you just got to have a car or else you can't get around. Like, Colorado's the same. Like you need a car basically. Yeah. Unless you live like in a specific neighborhood. Although there's a bunch of people that live in my town and they try to bike everywhere, but I don't feel safe on the road so much.
Yeah, exactly. I feel that way too. I'm like walking around. I'm like the only person walking around Tulsa. And you're just like, I probably should get into a car here instead of walking here on foot.
So we do have to yield our time coming up. So Jon, where can people find you? We'll be able to put links so you don't have to like spell it out.
Okay. Yeah. People, you guys can find me like on Twitter, twitter.com. Well, you didn't tell me I didn't have to say. Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. My website as well, Entrecreator Media.
Cool.
If you're interested, if you are a content creator and, trying to figure that out, I could be happy to chat with you. And I also have a personal website too, which we can link to.
Cool.
And that's just kind of like more, it's kind of random. There's just all kinds of topics there about lifestyle and travel and stuff.
All the stuff you're into. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Jon. It's been awesome to catch up with you here. And I guess we'll see you around here.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Doug. Appreciate it.
And that's it. We'll catch you on the next episode here. And thanks a lot.
Cool. That was fun.